I might sound foolish, but can I tell you something you were never supposed to hear from me? You have been feeling it for a while, haven't you? That strange feeling that something is happening beneath the surface of your life, something you cannot prove, something you cannot explain, but something inside you refuses to ignore. And what makes it even more unsettling is that the feeling has become stronger just when you thought you were finally learning how to live without answers. You have smiled when you wanted to ask questions. You have stayed quiet when your heart wanted to speak. You have pretended that certain things did not matter because admitting how deeply they mattered would have made you feel exposed. And yet, somewhere in the silence, you already knew that the story you had been telling yourself was incomplete. Maybe you have called yourself foolish for noticing the little things, a pause that lasted too long, a message that arrived at exactly the wrong, or perhaps exactly the right, moment, a name appearing when you were trying desperately not to think about it. A song suddenly playing when you were remembering something you thought you had buried, a dream that felt different from an ordinary dream, a look from someone that seemed to carry an entire conversation without a single word being spoken. You told yourself it was coincidence. You told yourself not to read too much into it. You told yourself that if something were real, you would not have to search so hard for evidence. But then why did your heart keep returning to the same question, and why, every time you tried to close that door inside yourself, did something seem to whisper that you had not yet reached the truth? I might sound foolish, but can I tell you that I know the reality, not the reality you fear. Not the reality your anxiety has created in the darkest hours of the night, not the version of reality that has been built from every unanswered message, every changed expression, every distance between you and someone you once felt close to. I am talking about the reality that exists beneath all of that. And before you hear it, you need to understand something. The truth did not hide from you because you were unworthy of knowing it. The truth waited because you were not yet ready to understand what it would change inside you. You thought the waiting was punishment. You thought the silence meant rejection. You thought the distance meant the end. But what if the silence was protecting something? What if the delay was preparing you? What if the person you thought was walking away was actually being forced to confront something within themselves that they had spent years avoiding? And what if the greatest mystery was not what they were doing without you, but what was happening inside you while you waited? Because you have changed, you may not see it every morning. You may still wake up with the same questions. You may still have moments when you wonder why your heart cannot simply let go and move forward, but something in you has become stronger, something in you has become quieter, something in you has stopped begging for answers and started demanding truth. That transformation did not happen by accident. There was a moment when you realized you could no longer keep pretending. Maybe nobody saw it. Maybe nobody heard the words you whispered to yourself. Maybe you were alone when you finally admitted, I cannot keep doing this. You did not know it then, but that moment was a turning point. Because sometimes destiny does not announce itself with thunder. Sometimes destiny arrives disguised as exhaustion. Sometimes your breakthrough begins with the moment you finally become tired of surviving the same emotional cycle. You wanted certainty. Instead, you received silence. You wanted a sign. Instead, You received another unanswered question. You wanted someone to come closer. Instead, they seemed to disappear farther into the distance, and yet, strangely, the more they disappeared from your sight, the more clearly you began seeing yourself. That is the part nobody warned you about. Sometimes a person enters your life and you think they are there to become your future. But before you can know what they are meant to become, they awaken something inside you that had been sleeping for years. They make you feel. They make you hope. They make you question. They make you confront wounds you thought were healed. They make you discover how deeply you can love, how deeply you can hurt, and how desperately you want to be understood. But then comes the question you have been afraid to ask. What if they felt it too? What if the distance did not mean they felt nothing? What if the silence was not emptiness? What if they were struggling with feelings they did not know how to name? You may remember moments when their behavior seemed to contradict itself. One day, warmth; the next, distance; one moment, closeness; then suddenly, silence. A conversation that felt meaningful, followed by days of uncertainty. A look that seemed impossible to misunderstand, followed by behavior that made you question everything. You thought you were imagining things. You wondered whether you had created meaning where none existed. You even questioned your own heart. But there was one detail you could never completely erase from your memory: the way they looked at you when they thought you were not looking. You remember it. And perhaps that is why you are still here, because something about that moment never felt finished. You can forget words. You can forget dates. You can forget entire conversations. But there are certain moments your soul seems to preserve, not because you are supposed to remain trapped in them, but because they contain something you have not yet understood. And now comes the part that may surprise you. The person you have been thinking about may not have been as unaffected as you believed. Their silence may have contained questions of its own. Their distance may have contained fear. Their hesitation may have contained conflict. Their disappearance may have been less about not caring and more about not knowing what to do with what they felt. But do not rush to the conclusion you want, because this story is not simply about someone coming back. It is not about chasing a person. It is not about waiting beside a closed door forever. It is about something much deeper. It is about the moment when you stop asking, "Will they choose me?" and begin asking, "Why did I ever believe I needed someone else's choice to know my worth?" That question changes everything, because love without self-respect becomes desperation, hope without wisdom becomes obsession, waiting without purpose becomes a prison, but love combined with courage becomes transformation, and you are approaching that transformation now. You can feel it. You have begun noticing that you do not react the way you used to. Things that once destroyed your entire day now make you pause. Things that once made you chase explanations now make you step back. You still care, but you are learning not to abandon yourself while caring. That is powerful, and perhaps that is exactly why something is beginning to shift, not because you forced it. Not because you begged for it, not because you manipulated circumstances, but because you finally stopped trying to control what was never yours to control. And when you released your grip, you created space for something unexpected to reveal itself. You may have thought the story was ending. You may have believed that the final chapter had already been written, but there are stories that become quiet before they become clear. There are doors that close because you are standing in front of the wrong entrance. There are people who disappear because both of you need to become different people before another conversation can happen, and there are truths that cannot be revealed while you are still terrified of losing the answer. You wanted the answer so badly that you almost forgot to ask whether the answer would actually set you free. But now you are beginning to understand. Freedom does not always come from getting what you wanted. Sometimes freedom comes from discovering that you can survive not getting it, and that discovery changes the energy of everything around you. Suddenly, you are not waiting from desperation. You are waiting from peace. You are not hoping because you are afraid to be alone. You are hoping because you believe your life still has meaning regardless of what happens next. You are no longer standing at the window asking when someone will return. You are standing at the window wondering what is coming toward you. And that is when the unexpected happens. Something shifts. It may be small at first. A message. A coincidence. A familiar name, an unexpected encounter, a conversation you never thought would happen again. But the important part will not be what happens outside you. The important part will be who you are when it happens, because you will notice something strange. You will not feel the same panic. You will not immediately lose yourself in possibilities. You will not start imagining an entire future from one sentence. You will listen, you will watch, you will feel, and you will understand that this time, you are not meeting them as the person who was waiting. You are meeting them as the person who learned how to stand without them, and that difference will be impossible to hide. There may be a moment when they look at you and realize something has changed, not your appearance, not your voice, something deeper, your energy, your eyes.